As a child, I viewed malls as enormous playgrounds where I could partake in scavenger hunts with my friends and play hide and seek while my parents shopped. Little did I know that one incident would instill a lasting fear of malls in me, persisting into adulthood. Over 2 decades ago, the tale I'm about to share unfolded. In my early years, I resided in a bustling city characterized by its expansive urban landscape. Amidst the presence of malls, schools, and subways, the city's evolution also left behind traces of the past. Antique buildings abandoned and scattered throughout its existence, one of which was a vast mall that was only a few feet behind our playground. One day, amidst an intense round of hide and seek, where I found myself among the last players, my competitive spirit surged. Determined to secure a unique hiding spot where nobody could conceive of finding me, the abandoned mall emerged as the ideal location for my cunning plan. Swiftly, I made my way towards the mall, aiming to evade detection throughout the journey. Upon arrival, I began scouring for an entry point. The 3 main entrances to the mall were securely sealed. However, my eyes caught sight of a small, cracked air vent positioned at a reachable height. I crawled through the air vent, navigating the confined space to gain entry into the mall. Once inside, the allure of exploration eclipsed any thoughts of the ongoing hide-and-seek game. My curiosity took the reins as I wandered for nearly an hour, delving into the remnants of the once dynamic stores. Cosmetics, clothing shops, and even a barber shop. I could find everything. However, one store seized my attention more than the others. It was a clothing shop that, despite the passage of time, felt remarkably new. The glass remained unscathed, the doors inside were still closed, and 3 mannequins in the front donned clothes. A surprising sight resembling huge toys in my young mind. Moving on from that captivating store to explore the rest of the mall, I found myself just a few feet away when a sound of shattering glass reached my ears. Startled, I decided to exit the mall. But unfortunately, I found myself unable to recall my entry point. I was terrified as I was walking around the entire mall looking for an exit, and quickly my imagination started playing dirty games on me as I started hearing some footsteps behind me. The footsteps precisely mirrored my rhythm. They commenced with every step and ceased when I stood still, creating an illusion that they were my own. However, they resembled more the echo of wooden soles striking the ground. As I was still questioning where I came from, screaming desperately for my friends to find me and get some help, I could spot something that stood pretty far away from where I was. As I took the time to examine it, it was surely one of the mannequins I'd seen earlier. But what was it doing there, and how did it get outside of the store was what I couldn't really understand. As much as I walked around, every time I looked behind, the same mannequin would be standing the same distance separating us, and that's when I really freaked out. I started running around the mall, crying and yelling at the top of my lungs, asking for help, and that mannequin seemed to follow me everywhere. As a desperate way to prove that, I faced the mannequin and started walking backwards, and it was only a short while for me to bump into something. As I turned around, what I saw terrified me. The same mannequin was standing there. I quickly turned towards the mannequin that I was trying to surveil the entire time, and it simply wasn't there, and that's how I knew for sure that this mannequin was surely alive. However, something about the mannequin's pose really captured my attention. It was different than the one I've seen in the store. This time, the mannequin extended its index finger, pointing in a specific direction. Upon following its indication, I realized it was gesturing towards the vent I had used to enter the mall all along. I hurried towards the vent, and this time, there were no accompanying footsteps, nor did the mannequin trail behind. I swiftly leapt outside of the mall, carrying a tale that will forever linger in my memory. My childhood was full of fantasies, from protecting princesses to hunting local monsters. Me and the other kids I grew up with did it all, but one single encounter still haunts me to this day, as it only made sense to me very recently as an adult. I grew up in a little but very fastly evolving city. As both of my parents used to work, I spent an important portion of my time playing with other kids, going on little adventures of our own. Heck, we even had a secret base that we built out of scrap and some planks that we took from our parents. But I still recall the day we were expelled from our little headquarters, as the field it was built on was sold to an entrepreneur who was planning on building a mall on it. And that's why, very early, we held a grudge against that mall and its owner. I remember that the construction work didn't take long at all. I believe it was barely a year and a half for the mall to be considered finished and was open to the public. But soon enough, rumors started surfacing as two kids from a close city went missing after going to the mall on their own. I remember their pictures all over the place. I remember even participating in a campaign to look for them, but they were nowhere to be found. The mall's very early bad reputation left the owner with no other option but to close its doors and put it for sale. Unluckily for him, no one really seemed to be interested in purchasing the mall, and that's how the building quickly turned into an abandoned and lifeless shelter for stray animals. A couple of years later, now teenagers, me and a friend of mine plan on going to the mall in a desperate attempt to experience a sense of thrill during what was one of the most boring school years we ever experienced. On a Thursday, me and him met up after school and walked to the abandoned mall while sharing creepy things we thought about finding there, building up each other's adrenaline. The mall looked nothing like the mall we remembered. It was full of dust, rusty closed garages, broken windows and lamps, non-functioning elevators, escalators, and vending machines all engulfed in a creepy pitch darkness. I realized that it might have not been the greatest idea, and even contemplated ditching the plan, but then I thought about how anticlimactic that would be, and how my friend would shame me for it for the rest of my life. My friend turned on his flashlight and pointed it in different directions, revealing the hideous state the mall was in. It was full of glass shards, random objects thrown on the ground, broken doors, garages, dents in the wall, and even what looked like a bat colony. We kept walking through the mall, hoping to find something that was worth discovering. I noticed my friend's light slightly shaking, and I decided to try and scare him. I poked him on his back, which was enough to make him lose grip of the flashlight. It falls and breaks immediately. We were scared shitless, thinking we were going to get lost in the pitch black darkness, just to notice it wasn't that dark. There was a light source not too far away, so we started following the light. As we took a turn, the light was coming from a shop, a toy shop. Its entrance was full of display dolls, and it was the only shop which was barely damaged. We looked at one another in terror, locked eyes the entire moment. We kept slowly walking towards the shop as tension was rapidly building inside us. After what felt like an entire hour, we reached the shop's entrance. Its doors were wide open. As we stepped inside, I froze in place for a moment as the corner of my eye caught a human figure on my left. I slowly turned my head facing it, almost wetting my pants in the process. As I locked eyes with what looked like an ordinary old man in his 80s, he made a slight friendly expression, cracking a smile at me and my friend. A million questions ran through my brain in a single moment. Isn't this mall closed? What is this old man doing here? Is he lost? Is he even real? Then the silence was suddenly broken by what sounded like a group of kids singing. In our shop of childhood dreams, dolls and toys and dance, it seems, welcome to a world agleam. The sound was coming from a group of dolls dancing in harmony to the song. I took a good look at the dolls and realized they had sad expressions on their faces, almost like they're full of life. I then looked at the old man again. He didn't say a word, but extended his arm to the left and pointed at a large collection of dolls, indicating that he wanted us to take a look around the shop. We started looking at the dolls. They were well sculpted and obviously took a long time to make. 2 dolls stood out the most. They looked shocked, in pain, and for a moment, I could swear one of them looked me in the eyes. Its face looked strangely familiar. It took me a moment to realize where I saw that face before. It was on the missing posters. Those 2 sad-looking dolls resembled the 2 kids who went missing years before. I looked at my friend and realized just by looking at him, he also noticed that. I tried getting his attention, and he looked at me. I'd never in my life seen him make such an expression. We were shook. The old man then spits out his first words. His voice is deep and raspy, as if he hasn't talked in a long while. He says, "I see you kids like those 2 dolls. Perhaps you want me to sculpt some that look like you too." The moment I heard that, a chill ran down my spine, and I started sprinting out of the store. My friend, on the other hand, was not as fast. I turned around to see the old man holding him in a headlock. My friend used his broken flashlight to stab the old man in his thigh. He screamed in agony as my friend was set free. He started running behind me towards the window we came through. I could hear the old man screaming at the top of his lungs, something I couldn't quite decipher. We jumped through the window and kept running, not saying one word to one another, and each of us went home. Through the next couple of days, we never stopped talking about what happened that day. We talked about it to our classmates, teachers, parents, neighbors, and tried convincing them to go investigate the mall in a group. They finally decided to go and see for themselves, but to our surprise, they didn't find a single open shop, nor did they meet the old shopkeeper. Everybody came back to town in great disappointment, and they all blamed it on our imagination. Me and my friend are, to this day, still completely certain of what happened that day, and we talk about it regularly.